You're listening to the Parents of Hardworking Teens podcast, episode 38, with my answer to one of the most common questions I get from parents, which is why aren't the skills and strategies that I talk about all of the time, the skills of applying subject knowledge, why aren't they being taught in schools? And a less common question, but one I got recently, why aren't there therefore more teachers or tutors or companies out there delivering this stuff? I'm Katie Jones, and with over 15 years in education as an award-winning high school teacher, international external examiner, and as a study coach, I've helped thousands of students skyrocket their results and confidence. And this podcast is where I share all my insights, tactics, and tips with you, the parent, so you can help your hardworking teen get happy, smart, and successful in their study, and have you both enjoy the journey along the way. This is the Parents of Hardworking Teens podcast. Hey VIPs, I hope you are having a great week so far. I have to say, I feel like I'm just loving life at the moment. I'm loving the weather right now. It is still hot and sunny, but not crazy hot and humid. And that is good because I've been out doing lots of long dog walks at the moment. Because not so great. I've kind of strained my back a bit, nothing serious, but I was kind of getting up out of chairs, stuck at a bit of a 45-degree angle for a few days. So I stayed off the gym all of last week, and I've literally just been walking every day. And this week, I'm gradually getting back to a few light gym sessions, but just still doing lots more walking. And I do a fair bit of walking anyway, but just doing so much more at the moment and enjoying and loving the sunny but fresh, nice, bright, sunny mornings. And the other thing that I'm loving is answering your questions and receiving your requests for topics for me to cover here on the podcast. I have a spreadsheet. You won't be surprised to hear. I have a spreadsheet where I have all of the things I want to talk about or the topics I want to cover on the podcast. And right now, I've probably got about 40 episodes listed in there that I could make. So I'm picking out the ones that you're requesting and coming up with new ones based on your conversations and questions with me. So if you have a request, send me an email, support@rocksolidstudy.com, and you may well have your wish granted on an episode soon. So I'm going to get into not one, but two questions right now. Now, the first one that I get all of the time is, why is this not being taught in schools? And by this, they mean the skills and strategies of effective study and exam performance. In particular, how to actually apply knowledge to the way that questions are asked and mark schemes require. And these skills that make up the application part of the knowledge plus application equals success formula. The skills that I keep talking about all of the time and that I believe are critical to your teen achieving their true potential when it comes to the grades in their coursework, their assessments, even in their classwork, and especially in their exams, especially external exams, when it comes to them achieving what they are truly capable of and the confidence that goes with that. Like, if this is so important, if these skills are so important, why aren't schools teaching them? And related to that is another question that I just got asked recently and was really actually the catalyst for this whole episode, which was, why aren't there more tutoring companies or teachers or tutors doing this outside of school? As in, there's obviously a need for this. So if it isn't being delivered in schools, how come there aren't other people or courses jumping in and teaching this? Why haven't I seen this offered elsewhere? I think was the way they actually put it. So I'll explain my take on everything. So first up, why this really isn't being taught much in schools, or at least not in a comprehensive and integrated way. Because I do know that there are things like one-off study skills workshops and things like that, but during and within lessons or as part of the delivery of assessments, to my knowledge, the skills of application, of exam technique, of strategic study aren't being taught in that way in schools. But to be honest, I only really and truly came to really know this and understand the problem with that once I'd A, taught and tutored across enough different countries and states to realize that, and B, had the experience of external exam marking myself to realize that these skills were critical and would make a huge difference to students and the way that they work. And from my personal experience, I see 3 main reasons why it isn't being taught in schools. And the first is that it's just not required to be. Everything in the curriculum or the syllabus documents is orientated around the subject content, the facts, the knowledge, the understanding. Now, yes, there are some subjects that might have certain subject-specific skills that are associated with the subject. For example, it might be dissections in biology, or a certain cooking method in food tech, or tool in DT and the use of it. But the specific and universal skills of application, they aren't really being taught. And by universal, I mean that they apply to any subject. They can be used across any subject, any exam board, and in any high school year group, particularly years 9 to 12 or years 10 to 13. And the second reason that they aren't being delivered is just that there simply isn't time. Those syllabuses, I just cannot bring myself to use that word syllabi. Those syllabuses are jam-packed with content. Just ask any teacher, especially a teacher of the senior year subjects, and they will tell you that probably one of the top 3 challenges of teaching is getting through and delivering all of the content in the timetabled time available. So there's the fact that these things just aren't required to be taught. There's very little time to do it, even if a teacher had the training for it and wanted to do it as an extra. Are 2 reasons why this doesn't happen. But the third reason is what I just mentioned then, that most teachers don't have the exam board training to do it, even if there was time. It's only a very small percentage of teachers who have even been exposed to these in-depth aspects of assessment. Because yes, all teachers are for sure trained about assessment in their training. So that's assessment in the classroom or for internal exams or reporting. But there is no requirement to ever go and actually work with an exam board. And I would say in all the schools I've worked at, either I've been the only one doing any kind of external assessment work, or I think in one school, quite a big school I was at, there was probably 2 other teachers who were doing that kind of thing. And then on top of that, there's only a fraction of those teachers who actually love it. Most are doing it for the 2 reasons that it's really advertised as valuable professional development and for some extra money. And I can tell you, it's not that much extra money. Some of the roles you actually don't even get paid for. So external exam marking, you do because you're doing that on top of your teaching work, like at home or on the weekends. But for the writing panel I was on last year, you don't actually get paid for that time. The school just has to cover you while you go to the exam board offices and do those meetings. You don't get paid any extra. And for me as a relief teacher now, I did get paid, but it was not as much as you would get paid for a relief day at school. And there are also not necessarily that many opportunities to do it. So for the writing panel I was on, there was only 2 of us as teachers, aside from the actual exam board officer, who were on the panel. When I did scrutiny panel the year before, it might have been the year before that, there were 3 of us. And that's out of the whole state. So there are not that many teachers who do it. And the fact is that for most teachers who are doing, let's say, external exam marking, which there are a few more of us, they don't necessarily love it. I know, so shocking. So even less of those teachers would then want to go even further to create a big project, a whole new career path out of it for themselves, which leads us nicely to that second question. Why haven't I seen more teachers or tutors or companies delivering these sorts of skills and information? Now, there may well be other people or companies delivering these skills. I am sure I am not the only one in the world. But I have to say, I don't spend a whole lot of time. In fact, I intentionally don't spend any time looking at what other people or companies are doing in this area. Just because I purposefully prefer to stay in my lane. I stick to doing what I know I do best and what I believe is most helpful. And even back in the beginning, when I first set up Rock Solid Study, I didn't actually need to go and do any of that typical, what do they call it, like proof of concept research. I already had that from the hundreds, maybe by then it was thousands, it would have been thousands of students that I'd been working with in class and through some tutoring. So I didn't research other tutoring companies. I didn't go and research if there were other programs like this. I didn't write a business plan. And I will admit, I didn't really know what I was doing when I started out. I just knew that I wanted to share the strategies that I had developed over the years and all of my insights and experience and what I had done through the training that I was allowed to share more widely. And I really realized that the best way to do that was to set something up online. Because at that time, I was still teaching full time. I was doing tutoring on top of that. And I just never had enough time in the classroom to do as much of this stuff as I wanted with my own students. And of course, there are only so many hours in the days or in the evenings for tutoring. So being someone who likes steps and structure, I decided to put everything I knew into a program that I could then put online. And that was what I got to work doing. I didn't actually have a clue about how to set up a business. I didn't know anything about marketing. I didn't really even know what was out there happening with tutoring companies or what have you. I just figured it all out as I went. And I say that as if it was like, oh, I just figured it out as I went. It was not straightforward. It was not a path that was lined with daisies and rainbows. I actually vividly remember in the early stages telling a friend of mine, I said, I think I've created a monster because I had mapped out the modules. I'd figured out how to make a basic website. I'd started to make the workbooks for the 10WGT, but as I was going, I just realized that there was more and more stuff involved. I needed to record and edit the videos. I needed to figure out how to make an actual member portal on that website, which was a whole extra thing. I needed to set up payment and access. And I didn't have a startup fund or a ton of spare money. So I was just trying to do as much of it as I could for myself. I did actually eventually pay a company to set up the course and payment processor on the website for me, which felt like a small fortune at the time. But I'm a girl who likes to have a project and a challenge. And this was the project that I wanted to pursue. And like I said, I already did know that this was something that students really needed. So there are many layers to all of the reasons that, in my experience, I don't think there are lots of other teachers or tutors doing this or delivering this type of training. Like I said, maybe there are, maybe just me and the parent who I was talking to haven't seen much of them, but it takes a lot to actually create and deliver something like the 10-week grade transformation program. But also it takes a lot in terms of all of the experience and training that I'd gone through before even getting to that point. And honestly, I can say if I'd have known in advance just how much of a monster project that would become and how much I didn't know, chances are I may never have done it. So definitely an example of knowledge not always being power. But it is based on years and years of in-depth and diverse experience in assessment and with exam boards. But I want to say quickly, please don't get me wrong here on what I'm saying in all of this. I know that there are many, many teachers out there with more years of teaching experience and many more years of external examination experience than me. There are teachers who can teach in many different ways than I can. There are tutors who have extensive experience in their subjects. I just think that what has happened is that all of these things for me have come about through a series of events and circumstances and choices, and yes, a lot of hard work, but it is not just that I have some special talent that was bestowed upon me or that I am better at these things than anyone else. It's just that I've put them together and decided to work on this as a project and as a way to train students and take everything further for all of us. Because this began way back in 2010, which was when I did my first ever external exam marker training and marked for the GCSE exams back in England. And I partly applied to do that, yes, for the extra money, because I was 29 and what 29-year-old teacher couldn't use some extra money. And also, though, because I genuinely was curious about what really went on behind the scenes in the world of exams. I'd been teaching for 4 years by then, and each year I would see a few of my classroom students doing better than expected on their final exams, and a couple doing worse. And I wanted to figure out why. Plus, I'd always been aware when I was a student myself, particularly, I would say in my A-levels, so the equivalent of the ATAR here in Australia, that some students just seem to hit nails on the head with certain questions, and I just never quite seemed to. I could not have been a more B+ student if I had tried. So I really did want to go behind the curtain and see how it all really worked. And as you may have heard me say before, from that first ever day of exam marker training, I was hooked. All the things I'd wondered about, I found out. And many more as well. Things like, why does that get a mark, but the way they wrote it there does not get a mark? Why was the question worded in that way? And what does it really mean? And so every opportunity since then, I have jumped on to be an external marker, a moderator, and in more recent years, a writing panel and scrutiny panel member. And yes, there are definitely other teachers who also do this, who find this interesting, who find it useful. But here's where things went a step further for me. Moving to Australia and also moving between different states and getting a few dodgy teaching timetables along the way with subjects thrown at me that I had no experience teaching meant I got a whole lot more experience in the world of exams and assessment. So, for example, as I already knew that exam marking had helped me improve my teaching, one of the ways I took it upon myself to get better at teaching in subjects that I had to teach on my timetable, but I didn't feel that proficient in, was to go and do external exam marking for it or be involved in the assessments, which is why I have now marked, and it sounds pretty crazy to list them out, but I have marked externally either as a moderator or an assessor or an external examiner across subjects like dance, geography, the NAPLAN writing test, the Year 12 QCS writing test, and even short response paper maths questions. And again, I am guessing, but I reckon there would only be a tiny percentage of teachers who have done that and done it across all different exam boards and internationally. And it was only after really getting into the variety of that I started to see the commonalities across all different types of mark schemes and the ways that they are worded, the structure of the questions, the requirements of assessment criteria, and how they are actually universal across different exam boards and different subjects. So that's why I don't think there's that much of this training out there. There are not that many teachers who are trained in it all. There are even less who do it and love it. And then there are even less who want to create more work for themselves or share this more widely, who are so totally engrossed and so passionate about sharing all of this with as many parents and students as possible. Because like I said, it is not like I did all of this in some pursuit of the big goal I had to create Rock Solid Study or the 10-week program or next level coaching. This has just all come together through a series of decisions, some related to education and some not, like leaving England and chasing the sun to Sydney and then to Brisbane and now to the Sunshine Coast. That wasn't so that I could do more exam marking in another country or interstate. It was because me and my husband, well, not then husband, but we wanted a new adventure and also plenty of sunshine. But with that came these new and additional teaching and exam board experiences. And that's coupled with, let's call it an uncommon love of all things exams and how they work. Plus the fact that I don't have kids, so I objectively have more time and headspace to work on this stuff. In fact, my husband and I actually now call Rock Solid Study our business baby. And that probably also meant that along the way, I was more able to take some financial risks of teaching less and training and coaching more on this. So I am not a special unicorn with amazing talents. But I do think that my experience and the extent of my personal training and expertise and having a genuine love for all of this and a curiosity around all of this is probably fairly unique. And I am going to keep honing and developing and extending my knowledge and my understanding of all of this with the aim now to intentionally be able to deliver the best training and coaching I can to your teen and to be able to share the most up-to-date and useful information and insights with you here on the podcast and in my online events. And I'm going to keep also enjoying the sunshine that I moved halfway around the world for. So I'm going to go now for my morning dog walk. The sun is shining. It is another beautiful day here. I'm recording this super early in the morning. I'm not just an exam geek. I'm also very much a morning person. So for more non-crazy rock and roll fun back here with me next week, I will see you then for another episode of the podcast. And be sure to email me with any of your podcast questions or requests requests. Have a brilliant day, have a wonderful week, and I'll catch you soon. Bye. If you're ready to have your teen achieve their best possible results with less stress, then I want to invite you to enroll them in the 10-week Grade Transformation Program, where they're going to learn the key concepts, skills, and strategies to catapult their performance in assessments and exams. It's risk-free. They either achieve bigger and better results with a whole lot more confidence in 10 weeks, or we refund you in full. Just head over to www.rocksolidstudy.com/program, and I'll see you there.